This is the Inkpulp podcast. This is the Inkpulp podcast. Comics, hip hop, life.
Didn't you watch The Wire? There's a lesson in that movie. The systems that you build to protect you will ultimately wreck you. What the fuck are you doing, comics people? Trying to turn comic books, this industry of ours, into a fucking corporate institution. Where's the HR department to take care of us? Man, we're pirates. Fuck that noise. You build that shit, it's gonna wreck you. It's plain and simple. Watch The Wire. Life's lessons are all in The Wire for us. Oh shit, my battery's getting low. Anyways, it's a quick little podcast today. I was talking to a good friend of mine today. He was looking to move into a bigger apartment. And his rent, or not, maybe not a bigger apartment. I don't know if it's bigger. I think it's a little bigger, but it's nicer and it's right where he wants to be. And rent was a little bit more, like $150 a month more. And he was saying, should I do it? And it made me think, when I was moving my studio from a smaller space into a bigger space, my landlord was cutting me a real nice break, and my rent was going to go up just $100, but I was getting like twice as much space. And I was really stressing about it, really anxious about it. Should I do it? Should I do it? I knew I wanted to, and I knew in my heart it's what I needed to do. And just started thinking, $100? That's not make you or break you money. So I did it. And I was fine. And I learned, and through some books I read and through some podcasts I've listened to about money, I've learned if you put yourself in a situation where you need money, you're going to make that shit happen. You're going to find a way to make it work. So what I really want to talk about with this idea is, A, take risks. That's how you grow. You take a risk, you put yourself into a situation where change has to happen, and change will happen. But you can't just sit back and let it happen. You got to work to make it happen. But if you put yourself in that situation, that's how change happens. Staying comfortable, change ain't going to happen. A lobster doesn't stay the same size in its shell. It sheds that shit to grow a new one and to become bigger. So that's lesson number one. Lesson number two, I'm trying to remember my point here. Put yourself in a situation, change will happen. Oh, pay yourself first. That's a good financial lesson that I'm learning. You get money coming in, you get paid. Take some money. Well, whatever you think it is, every check you get, and put it into your savings. And then people say, no, I pay my bills first. Pay yourself first. Bills will get paid. You'll figure it out. You pay yourself first, you'll figure it out. Pay your bills first, you'll never save. Who's more important than you? Nobody. Pay yourself first. Here's another video today of me inking a piece and talking my way through it. More Inkpulp Instruction. Today, it's a Marilyn Manson commission. A strange one for me. I don't get too many like real people, but a fun one nonetheless. So tune in, listen. Hope you like. Peace. All right. Let's see. All right. So we're inking this Marilyn Manson commission I got. And well, first thing I'm noticing is I was shooting this time lapse, at 1 frame per second, which the camera I'm using was the lowest I could go. And as I'm watching it, I guess I'm wishing it was moving a little slower, and capturing my movements a little better, like the Silver Surfer did. But whatever. So this composition piece, or the composition of this piece, I really wanted to bring your attention into the face. I'm not. I mean, part of me says I'm not good at likenesses, and part of me says I was being lazy and didn't even try for a likeness. But I just wanted to capture the essence and cartoon the character a bit, or not even the character, the person. Well, it's kind of a character he made up. So I had these psychedelic horror tendril things with mushrooms and skulls growing out of them, all leading you down towards his face. And the commission was specifically about the Marilyn Manson Antichrist Superstar tour and album. So I threw the halo in there, sort of like an Antichrist thing. And I was going to use a lot of rendering in the face. As you can see, that's where I am right now, really building those thick containment lines with the brush, lots of fine lines in the face, the hair texture. I was happy with the hair texture on this one. Hair is tricky because I treat it as a single mass and then add texture to it, which I think is the key to hair, to see the wedges and masses of it and treat it as if it were a solid piece of clay, and then it will inform you as to where the shadows and highlights go, and the technique you use to render those shadows and highlights will describe the texture of the hair. I think people get bogged down in thinking of hair as too many separate little strands. So, I thought of it as a chunk falling from behind his ear down to his chest, a chunk falling behind his ear, and sort of a chunk on top. And then I broke up those chunks with texture. And that's how I achieved the hair. I was happy with the hair on this one, especially around his neck, where it does feel like a bunch of separate straight hairs, which, looking at pictures of Marilyn Manson, was a nice way to capture it, capture what's really happening. Big black lipstick, typical of the Marilyn Manson character. But again, the face is all about the thick black shapes, the thick black lines, and the thin rendering marks. So you get sort of a wedge under his cheekbone of thick blackness where a shadow would recess. But under his lower lip, and you'll see at the end, because we'll put a scan up of the finished piece, there's a lot of little rendering going on in the face. I also knew that he'd have these like leather armbands on that would be primarily black, and there would be some rendering in that. Well, let me talk about this. So the shoulder there, you've got the anterior deltoid mass and the medial deltoid mass, and the posterior. The anterior is the front mass. So I figured to give a shoulder a rounded look, as if it's rounding away from you towards the front of the shoulder, I would shadow the anterior mass with those hatch marks I threw in there. So that was a neat little technique. So yeah, the armbands, which I'm going to get to here in a second, we're going to be black. There's going to be some rendering in it. I'm trying to keep the bulk of the rendering up near his face, but I figured I could get away with some rendering here. And the arm could lead, the black shape of the arm could also point towards the face, the same way those like root like tendrils that are kind of growing out of him all pull you towards his face. So that little technique there on the band where you get the highlight, that's all dry brush flicks. But if you look on the back side of the band, I left some of those hatch marks visible. And that's something I like to do, where I feel like, even in the darkest of darks, you're going to have light penetrating those areas. And I like to, where I can and where it makes sense, introduce like if the full black, like behind his head, that's 100% black. Well, those little hatch marks on the back side of the second band down, that makes it like an 80% black. And I think that gives some volume to it. Um, Now, as far as what I'm doing here is I'm taking a G pen, which is a Japanese nib. My goal was to render him out in brush so you get like much more variety in line making, much richer, thicker lines, much deeper blacks, so that the focus would be on him. It also would create some atmosphere if I do all the tendrils and skulls and mushrooms in pen. So the G pen has a little bit of flex to it. It's also the thickest of the nibs. So I wanted to use that to outline everything. And then I'm going to go in and render with a Maru nib, which is what you're seeing right now. You can see it's a different holder I'm using even. And here I'm kind of applying a technique I learned from looking at Mobius a lot over the years, this hatch work. I'm trying to create some value change in these to give them some volume, but I don't want it to compete with the work I've done on the character itself, because one thing I'm experimenting with in my work, and you'll see it more and more in my commissions. You see it here with Marilyn Manson. You see it if you look at my social media. You'll see it on the Scarecrow, and I'm about to do an Etrigan. Oh yeah, that's right. You heard me right. I'm about to do an Etrigan. So I'm going to play with that in there as well, I think. I'll let the composition speak to me as I'm figuring it out. But I'm enjoying the variety of mark making, the ability to create atmosphere and control focus through line weight and through tool. So I'm rendering the vine a little bit here. I'm getting some texture into the underside of the mushroom. I'm not proficient with nibs at all. And this is also a way to kind of force me to get more comfortable with them, get more familiar with them. I understand the rendering techniques I'm doing. What I'm not great with is the tool in making those marks. It's not terrible, but I've got a lot to learn with these nibs. And for years, I have tried to bring nibs into my work, and it just hasn't gelled with the brushwork. And I think I'm starting to figure that out now. I did a short story, a sci-fi story for Ahoy Comics. I did a couple. And in those, like one, I put Killer Mike as the main character. In those, I use nibs in the brush areas. And I think I created something interesting looking there. And I do think it works, but I think I'm a little more interested in treating different objects with these different tools. For me, it was always strange, the marks made by metal versus the marks made by hair in my work. And this is not true of other people's work. I don't like Klaus Janson. They dance harmoniously together. In my work, they look like they're from two separate worlds. And so I think what I'm figuring out here is I can use these tools separately in a composition to make the composition itself more effective. So if I would have outlined these vines with the brush and rendered with the nib, I think it would have come too close to what I did in the Marilyn Manson character. And I don't think they would have worked together very well. So it's a lot of experimentation going on, and I'm enjoying it. I mean, I enjoyed working with the nibs like this. They're a finicky fucking little tool, these metal nibs. They're giving me some interesting results. I've got a lot to learn and play with. They're not like my brush. The brush is so beautifully organic. But I figured I'll get there, and I'm happy with the way this definitely came out, and the techniques I garnered from it. What's a little hard is building your values, because I'm using a very rough paper, and the Maru nib itself, the G pen is very easy to use. You can travel in any direction with it, and it won't catch on your paper. but the Mara nib is very sharp, and on rough paper, it catches. So when you start to build on top of lines, and it lays, excuse me, nibs lay down a lot of ink, whereas a brush, you can control how much it lays down. So usually if you see me at a convention rubbing my hands over an ink drawing, I'm feeling the drawing to see if a nib was used. If a nib is used, you can feel the ink raised off the paper because there's so much of it down, whereas the brush doesn't put down as much and the ink sinks into the paper very nicely. So with those raised areas, when you go back over them, it can really make your nib catch. And this is also a very fresh Mara nib I just started using with this piece. My older Mara nib was getting dull. So as I work with it, you will see, as I work with a nib, it breaks in a bit and gets a little less sharp, and that's kind of nice. But then it means your lines aren't as fine, which is another thing. Anyways, I'm just getting to know how to use these fuckers. You saw me go into the eye with the G pen. When it comes to like pupils and stuff, I can do it with a brush, but it's such a tight little area, and it requires such precision for a circle. If it was a Winsor Newton brush, it would be easier. They have a longer tip. So I tend to use nibs or microns. Here, I decided to render the tattoo in nib. I wanted it to look like it was in the skin, not as dark as the blacks around him. So I wanted to have a translucency to it, like a tattoo has. I mean, you're seeing black ink come through layers of skin, and the ink does fade as it ages. So a tattoo does have some translucency to it. So that's that. Here's my little ink pulp stamp. Wabam. I love this. That's nice. I like how it breaks up too. My signature. And now I'm going to get some white going. So I mask off the area with my magnets and my paper just to control where it goes. This is a little crazy, but I do it. And there I just tap a brush with a pen, load it up with white ink, and boom, I got it. So yeah, that's the piece. Now I erase very carefully because I can get a little anxious when I'm erasing and bend the paper, and that's bad. You don't want to give someone a commission that's beat up. So I try to keep it pretty. Just remove all the pencil. Here I'm putting a little highlight in the eye, and that's the piece. Looking over it now. Hopefully right now you're seeing a scan of it, and I'm happy with it. I think it came out nice. I hope you enjoyed listening to this. I hope getting some insight into my thinking of my process helps you along your little art journey as well. I guess this makes me the Bob Ross of inking comics, or not, because it's Marilyn Manson and fuck it. Yeah, guys, everyone, girls, just do me a favor. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, and leave me some feedback. Let me know what you thought of this. This is all leaning and gearing up towards the release of Inkpulp Instruction, which is coming very soon. Thanks, you all.